You're listening to Healthcare Now Radio. Stand by for This Just In, the latest in healthcare innovation and technology trends with your HIT advisor, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in and welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these segments, I'll bring you the latest advancements in business, strategy, corporate growth, and innovation. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. For this episode, my 153rd episode, we have a very special guest, Brett Hunsaker, who oversees the Southeast for Newmark Knight Frank, a global commercial real estate firm based out of New York City. Welcome to the show, my good friend.
Glad to be here, Justin.
And I love hosting these shows. We're going to focus today on business best practices and strategies. And a little background for my audience. Brett and I have known each other for about 15 years, but became close friends during a Metro Atlanta chamber trip to Italy, I guess about 6 years ago. And I think our wives actually first suggested that I have you on the radio because they find our dialogues so entertaining. And as I was prepping for the show, I realized this could go really good or really bad.
It's always 50-50 with us.
Exactly. And just so the audience know, we are close like brothers, and therefore how we communicate can scare some people. But I always enjoy our lively conversations and discussions, and very glad you're able to join the show, brother.
Glad to be here.
So for my audience, you possess a great in-depth knowledge and expertise on marketing, sales, business development. And when I thought about this show, I'm just grateful that you took the opportunity to join us because, I love sharing best practices and strategies and wisdom with my audience. And I know that you have a lot around sales and marketing specifically, but all around you give really great advice. But also for everybody to know, Brett is known as Mr. Shmooze and has been doing sales and marketing as well as leadership of sales executives for 30 years based right here in Atlanta, but primarily focusing on the commercial real estate market. Besides being just an all-around great guy and a true sales expert, Brett is also the subject of a book by Richard Abraham called Mr. Shmooze, The Art and Science of Selling Through Relationships. So I can't wait to dive into this. Tell us about that book really quick and how that came about.
Well, Rick and I were working with a commercial real estate firm up in Chicago, and it was during the dot-com boom, and we were trying to get ourselves into some consulting business. And basically that book was written with a lot of things, not just from me, but probably 6 or 7 other folks that Rick and I knew that just really built relationships with folks. And it was one of those things that he wrote the book for us to use as a marketing tool to go out and talk to the venture capital guys that were all selling their new ideas to the commercial real estate industry.
Yeah, and I can see after I read the book, I saw why having Brett as a friend is such a blessing because he is one of the most generous, giving people on the planet. And you're always coming back from trips, making me feel special, make my wife feel special, always doing extra things for us. And we just thought it was really cool. But then I realized there's a science behind it because the book is all about those nuances and those strategies.
Yeah, so. And it's about elevation. I mean, anytime you can take something simple and elevate it up to a experience, it's a win-win for both sides. And Rick Abraham, who wrote the book with me and lived that life, has been a joy for the last 30 years to be able to share those kind of things with not only business acquaintances, but personal friends.
Yeah. So before we dive in too deep, tell us a little bit about you, your background, where you grew up, college, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California and went to Cal State Fullerton. And in the early 80s, my current wife at that time had a child and decided to start anew in a new city. Met a good guy here that was my mentor named Arnold Heflin, and got in the commercial real estate business with a building in downtown Atlanta, 55 Park Place, and learned the business from him. And as the years went by, the companies I was with, I never left the company. It seemed like we always got bought by another company, so there was always new influences and programs that I learned through a lot of outstanding individuals as I grew up in the industry. And it was it's been fun because it's a lot of my companies I've been with, I got up to the national marketing level and met people from all over the country, and it's been a pleasure to be in the commercial real estate in Atlanta, but also see how it's growing around the whole Southeast.
Yeah, and your network is just ridiculously amazing. I mean, no matter what business I'm in, I tend to invest around and sit on different boards. You always have ways to help me, and no matter what sector, it's kind of cool. So I'm always
maybe I
for
should
that.
have created a thing called LinkedIn. No,
You should have, exactly, before they did. Yeah. So let's start off with kind of like a high-level question, and this will kind of begin to dive us in. So at a high level, to win more business, what do you think are the most important aspects, keys to success?
Well, and from my perspective, first of all, it's relationships. I mean, if you can put yourself into a relationship, and it takes time, and you got to listen. I think the biggest problem in sales today is that people are selling as opposed to listening. And I think, the concept of building a relationship with someone and getting to a level where it's you're not walking in cold to a meeting. And it's tough to do because a lot of people are out there really cold calling still, and you got to have some patience to learn how to build those relationships. So number one and foremost is have somebody in that room that knows you, but always listen to them, what's important to them. That's, to me, the most important thing.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And also, we're going to dive in, just for my audience sake, we're going to dive into this fairly in depth from a standpoint of, I'm going to break this up into 2 shows. So we're going to record our show today, about 26 minutes or so, and then we're going to do a second show. In the follow-up show, we're really going to focus on different chapters and themes that are in Mr. Shmooze. But here, we're going to keep it, just more general best practices and thoughts that you have. But again, for all my audience, we will dive into the book, Mr. Shmooze, in our follow-up session that we'll record right after this. So how do you recommend someone stand out with target clients that you're trying to get business with?
That's again, it goes back to listening. I think if you know, and I always say communication to clients, I call it my 4 Ps. It's you got to, anytime you communicate with a client, think about the 4 Ps. One is, basically problem solving. That's, if you can find a problem and solve it, you win. Now, I would say also don't create a problem to solve a problem. I have stories on that forever. But so problem solving is always important. Profit, you make somebody money or save money. That's one of the Ps. Power, if you can help someone elevate their position, in other words, maybe a lower manager that you do something for, and they increase their power in that position, get a higher job, they'll ride along with you for that. The other thing is always find someone a job. That's power to me. Mm-hmm. And the final one's passion. If you're communicating with someone, you want to build a relationship, then and you know what their passion is, always think about their passion first, because then you are warm to them. You're not a stranger.
Yeah, you're really investing in the person. Like you said, you started off, you're investing in the relationship. You're being a significant value to them. You're helping their career. You're making them look better. And those
100%.
Those are massive keys to success. And like you said, building really strong relationships, long-term bonds, because this can be a customer over and over again, probably in many cases.
And that's what a lot of people miss. One customer as opposed to 100 customers, but that one customer could be 100 over the next 20 years of your career, and who they know as well, because you do a good job for them. They're going to be a referral aspect of that as well.
Yeah, and actually, I do want to hone in on that a little bit, because that's how we, when we're building Greenway, that was how we got the most success, is we didn't just sell to everybody. We sold to the very right customers that fit our profile. We made them very successful. They became very strong advocates for us, and then we were getting referrals. Referrals are free for the most part. I mean, gosh, when someone sends you a customer or a prospect, that's the very low cost of zero to entry. And then you do a good job for them. They might send you to 10 more people, and that's a great way to network. It's
the herd mentality. You actually create the herd.
Exactly. And we did that very successfully in the Southeast, took it national, and then took the company public based on that platform and that infrastructure. But then also at the end of it, I know that we'll dive in probably more of our second segment around service. And this is just one piece, and I'll drop different pieces of the book that I loved. But you talk about how sales and service are so integrated. And I think people miss a couple of things. First of all, we just talk about building a relationship long-term rather than transactional. So don't see them as a transaction, see them as a relationship. But then also, when you do build these relationships, when your company goes in, service that customer as well. Don't just you might hand it off to your service department to implement or support or whatever. And this is more my world than probably your world, because, in the software sector and in the corporate structure, we hand things off. However, we always told our salespeople, stay involved in the opportunity. They can give you referrals and leads in the future, but then also see that deal through, see the implementation through, see them as a customer, see how successful they're being, be an advocate for them. Even if you have 100 customers, you'd be very successful at that point if you sold 100 deals, but you can still manage all that on a, once in a while, just checking back in. It means a lot to everybody.
It's the number one problem is follow-up.
Yeah.
And again, you have to have a strategy for your follow-up. I talk a lot about databases and pruning those databases and figuring out. And again, follow-up is the thing that's lacking. In the commercial real estate industry, people sign 5 to 7 year leases, maybe 10-year lease. So you do a deal. It's not, you don't have to worry about that customer for 5 years. Well, first thing, if you don't follow up, somebody else is going to be calling on them.
Yes.
And secondly, they may have needs. And it's hard to do, but in discipline-wise, you need to have 3 to 4 contacts a year with everybody in your database that's a client. And just ask them. I mean, the number one thing that changes in a lot of our relationships and careers is people's job titles. So you have a database, maybe you're sending marketing materials out or just keeping in touch, but you don't have the right title, you don't know someone's advanced. I mean, keep yourself focused on simple things. Always, in my opinion, when you're checking in, and it's getting interesting now, but always call through the front desk. The receptionist is a gatekeeper for people trying to get to your client, but also your best source to keep people away from your client. But understand that. Find out who in that respect, because a lot of people now call on the direct dial. They call someone on their cell. If that receptionist knows that you have a relationship with that C-level guy, then no one's going to get to that C-level guy in your industry except for you.
That's actually an excellent point. And actually, I won't give out the name, but there's someone that we have in common that's a very prolific investor here in town. But no one can ever get a hold of him. I can, but I actually go through his assistant sometimes because that way I can find out where he is. He may be he's out of the country a lot of the time, but it's just easier to go through her to find out where he is, what his travel schedule is, whereas he may not be able to respond, or I don't want to bother him if he's, in New Zealand or something. I don't need to talk to him emergency-wise. So, she probably knows
the answer to a question.
Very true.
More than he does. So yeah.
Very good point. So you mentioned this term, FDO. So tell me about this program and give me a little bit of an overview because I don't know what the heck it means.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I came up with this way before social media and where there's not as much contact anymore between people. But FDOs is food and drink opportunities. You have 5 days a week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, breakfast, lunch, and drinks.
Yep.
That's 780 of those a year if you take it 52 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So at 780, my all line, what I'll tell salespeople, if you're doing under 300, you need to get out of business. I mean, you need to go sell shoes at the store, or you just don't need to be in sales if you're not making that many contacts. Now, if you're over 600, you probably need to go to Betty Ford. So, I mean, it's one of those relationship things that you got to figure it out. But a good, strong number, 400, 500 FDOs a year, you're actually breaking bread, having a drink, meeting someone and talk to them. And I think we're losing that these days. I mean, it's I'll just send an email. It's amazing when you talk to people under 30. I'll just go through LinkedIn or I'll go through this. You have to put yourself in a position to break bread. A lot of people will say to me, well, I'm new in the sales. I don't have an expense account. Then go for coffee.
Right.
I mean, get over and do something. I have a meeting next week and a client, I said I'm going to come over for coffee, and he goes, then bring it. So it's interesting because he knows that I actually bring some coffee over. And I started this whole program with the touch points for afternoon stuff up in New York a long time ago in the 80s. And I was literally, going up and asking people for business. They all wanted to go out and meet afterwards. And we created a program called Meet-Ats and started having cocktails that I found my competitors and I actually split the check.
Yeah.
So we could afford it and everything else. So basically, FDOs have a chart, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, again, I have a whole program for it. If you got a family at home, you don't do the nighttime stuff, but you really load up on your breakfast and lunch. I was down in South Florida, and I literally saying this exact program. Well, no one gets up in the morning for coffee. I drove by 3 coffee places. They were all packed.
Yeah.
So there's always a place to find it. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but if you chart it on your program, you can actually make sure you're following through on a weekly basis. And you got to plan ahead. Grab coffee or especially a dinner or anything else, you got to plan a couple, 2-3 weeks out in advance.
Yeah, no, fantastic advice. And I think one thing I picked up on there was there are a lot of companies who don't offer expense accounts or extremely limited expense accounts now because we're always watching that mighty dollar more than ever. But this is investment in yourself. This is investment in your future. This is investment in your business. So maybe you can't expense it, but you still got to do it to your point. You can do it cheaply. You can do coffee. You can do a very light breakfast, and you can expense on your taxes. So I mean, you can still take the deduction.
Well, it's your tuition in sales.
Yeah, exactly.
You spent the money in college. Now spend some money on sales.
Very, very true. For those joining us a little late, my guest today is sales and marketing expert Brett Hunsaker, a.k.a. Mr. Shmooze. So tell me about your thoughts on CRM systems. Your companies that spend millions of dollars, thousands of dollars, $100,000, millions, tens of millions of dollars in CRM systems. What do you use, and how do you manage your client target database?
Well, once I heard a statistic from an Australian consultant that said that industry is like let's just say it's a $10 billion industry.
Yeah, more.
And basically, the CRM programs are in place now. Only about 5% are used. I mean, so people spend a lot of money on it. I have salespeople that don't want to put information in there. And basically because they think I'm going to take it as a manager. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to call your clients and ask how their wife Betty is. There's a fear there, but that you still control your information. So basically we have a proprietary system for our company, but also a lot of guys use Salesforce. Yep. I think that's probably the number one I hear about. But all I would say on the number one thing is capture everything in your CRM. Yeah. Forget about if the company has or not. You have your copy, but make sure you have it because that's where the skill set that I actually have. I did all this on notepads.
Yeah.
Nowadays you have it in there, knowing those little nuggets of information. So when you come across some other information, you know to share it with that person. And so I think it's. And it's funny, you got to update it. I find it amazing that people, and I've done some studies on this, your database is dead probably 30% a year. Mm-hmm. Information's bad.
Yes.
If you don't update it regularly, you're going to be in a situation where you're not going to have good information. And I don't know if you want me to delve in and out, but I have a program called Value Your Rolodex, which is that shows you how old it is. You tell somebody young now, they don't even know what a Rolodex is. But basically, I do it semi-annually. But I print out all my database, and I print it out on recycled paper. But I have a big database. I probably have 1,200 folks in just the database, and then I go by and I literally rank everybody on a scale of 0 to 3. 0 being someone I just met, I don't know. 3 being you. Mm-hmm. You'd be a 3. By the way, it has to go both ways, and this is for personal relationship. Yeah. And it's funny when you do this because a lot of people get to a point where they all think everyone's a 3 and the person doesn't even know them. But you just do that individually. Don't do anything else. Go down the list and rank it. Then I turn around and re-rank it on a scale of 0 to 7 on their decision-making power. Mm-hmm. 7 being an absolute decision maker, a CEO, someone that can
a building owner,
business, a building owner. A 6 is a high-level person. A 5 is an influencer, which is key in a lot of places. Yeah. And basically, you go down to a 0 is someone that is a friend or somebody, or as I say sometimes when I speak, is somebody's mom. And I said the mom is a 7 if she's a CEO of a company. So either way, but I rank them up, 0 to 3, 0 to 7, and I add them up.
Yeah,
your 10s, and no one has a ton of 10s.
Correct.
I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. Yeah. It's just hard to really maintain a 3-level friendship with a decision maker because you've got time issues. Yeah. But you rank it up, and then I always look at the people you have that are strong 5, 6, and 7s on the decision making, and are 0s or 1s in relationships. And I work on those relationships. I usually take about 40 of those folks every quarter. Why 40? There's 20 business days in a month. I know I can take 2 people a day and do something to try to build a relationship. And they wash out. Probably out of that whole thing, you'll increase 5 or 6 people's rating. And that's building the relationship. That makes your database and your CRM program full value.
Wow, that's strong, very powerful. And also in the book that we'll touch on here in a little bit, but you do talk about the importance of knowing people personally, take a genuine interest in them, knowing their families, their children, and what they like, and you track all that, and also inside your CRM.
That's all in your CRM. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think I have a 24 different personal characteristics that I track And then, most of the time you have about 15 or so. But I will share with you. I had a sales guy, and he's still in the business here in Atlanta, but he was a cold caller, and he's making about 15,000 cold calls a year. He was making West Coast. He'd go to, at 7 o'clock at night, he'd start the West Coast. He came to me. He was saying he was just having a hard time building relationships. And I said, well, here's this 24 characteristics. This is something that you can use, and when you pick up one, it's fine. Pick up two. Well, I didn't clearly tell him my strategy. He took that and emailed it to his whole database.
Oh, no.
And asked them to fill it in and send back. So I got some phone calls from CEO guys going, what is this guy, a stalker? Anyway, so you build everything and I think you made a good point there. Everything you touch that you feel is value, which is, in my mind, building a relationship, everything.
Yep.
And you plug it in somewhere in your CRM because at least it'll be a nugget somewhere down the road that'll pay off.
Yep. So here we're going to go to the rapid fire rounds just because I want to get through a couple other points here. You manage a lot of salespeople, and you have for your past 30 years or so. What's the best advice for them to be more successful and drive more business revenue?
Work ethic. I'm seeing, as a matter of fact, Rick wrote another book called Sales Drive. The it's not going to just come by email. So work ethic is you put in the time, and you have to. And again, it's out meeting people, shaking hands. Big in associations. Find associations that you can relate to, personally stuff or business stuff. But be out there and be active. And work ethic and drive, which is hard to teach, is one of those things I'm not seeing as much as I have in the past. I mean, I don't remember taking a vacation when I was in my 20s when I was working. And it appears that everyone now takes a lot of vacations. So not that you have to have no personal life, but you put in the time. Maybe that's the other one, put in the time.
Yeah. No, actually, I completely agree. It's and you talk also about structuring time. I think it's very important that you do structure time out to do certain things. Like you do so many calls a day, so many meetings, so many breakfast meetings, so many lunch meetings, potentially dinner meetings. And it's consistency, and it's a focus, and it's a drive. And I don't see a lot of it out there today, but I know that's exactly how I achieved my success. I know that's how you achieved your success. It's deliberate. We are deliberate with our time. And if you're deliberate with your time, you can make a tangible difference and have great success.
Yeah, you and I wouldn't be friends if we had a virtual trip to Italy.
Good point.
I mean, we would not be friends. I mean, because you just wouldn't.
You're right.
You have to get there and muck it up and see what happens.
That's actually a great point. So in that world, in that vein, what are your thoughts on sales and marketing via social media?
It's a necessary. You have to have it.
Yep.
You have to have a plan. The problem is, again, it is not the plan. And if you're not out there meeting people and getting eye to eye, I think you have in the industries we sell in. I mean, there's still always going to be commodity selling that you don't have to be person to person, all that stuff. But in the real world where you want to sell the big ticket items, you definitely need to have face-to-face meetings. And I think the social media ties into that. So I think what you do and blogs and the podcasts and all that stuff, I think it's valuable, but you're always giving something to the person.
Yes.
You're not trying to sell.
Yes.
And I think the biggest problem is and again, I've been told I'm wrong, but my strategy at Lincoln, anyone sends me a thing, I say yes.
Yeah.
Well, now, I'm 18 degrees separated with people, and they're trying to sell me something, but everyone's just trying to sell.
Yeah.
I think you have to give a benefit for me, and that's part of the thing we do. Rick has a Mr. Shmooze weekly column that we send out, and it's just about helping them out. So I think social media is there. You got to have a plan. You got to have it in place, have it structured, but make it sure it's not the only plan you have.
Yeah, and also, as you talk, I hear a lot of best practices. This is not just for sales teams and sales leaders. All CEOs need to be sales leaders. They're leading the sales for the organization. It rolls up to them at the end of the day. And so just hearing these best practices, because I coach a lot of CEOs now, not many have this expertise. They've chosen not to learn. Well, my salespeople will handle it. No, you are the biggest salesperson for your business. You have to go sell investors. You have to sell big customers. You have to sell new customers. You have to sell employees on your business. You are always selling. And everything we spoke about so far are best practices in every one of those scenarios that are critical to your business and growing your business and staying alive. So this show is really for everybody that's building a company, not just salespeople. A couple times you've mentioned the word elevate. What are some examples for us in that regard?
I've got a ton of examples in that, but I think I'll give you an easy one. So everyone plays in charity golf outings these days. So Mondays.
Well, I stink, so I got out of those, but yes.
I prefer that you don't play with me. But
correct.
And again, I'm a, as they know in golf, a 36 handicap, but I play to a 42, which shows you how bad I am. But everyone has fun when they play, and I think that's my goal is you can play with the best player in the world, but if they're having fun, then it's okay. But elevation, so if you have again, right now I just got an invitation to another one next Monday, and how do you elevate that? Well, first of all, before the round, you can always send information on the club they're going to play at. Something simple, just so a real golfer will read it and understand it. But the one thing I like for elevation, to give a best example, every club has a pro. You're going to go out there in a charity golf thing, and you're going to be playing, 18 holes. But go out and hire with your clients or with you. Hire the pro for 2 holes. Pay him a couple $100, and the pro comes out and he gives a lesson for 2 holes.
Oh, wow.
That to me is elevation.
Yeah.
It stands out, and no one else sees it. I had a long, good run at the establishment called Morton's.
Yeah.
And literally there, everything I did had an elevation touch to it. When the client walked in, there was his or her drink was on the table. The dinner itself was structured very formally. It was family style, which they don't like to do. But on the way out, when they left, the whole thing about it, Morton's at the time was Italian, Frank Sinatra. And in the car would be at the time CDs, or it would be the Frank Sinatra #1 tape playing when the guy got in the car. If you could work it out, you get the car wash while they're in there having dinner with you. There's a lot of ways to just do little things to elevate. And the way I would say it best, and it's for all of us, what do you like?
Right.
So when I was a broker and I was leasing office buildings, I gave out pens. I gave out Mont Blancs because I wanted a Mont Blanc.
That's awesome.
So always think about yourself.
Yeah, no, love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brett. We are going to record another show here, but that's all the time we have for today. And thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
And thank you to everyone for joining us today. And please tune in weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific to hear our latest shows. As always, you can track me on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag ThisJustinRadio so we can respond to your comments from the show. If you miss any of this episode or want to hear more, all of my shows are always posted on Apple iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Google Play, and TuneIn. Also, you can check out the new website we've launched at justinbarnes.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a terrific week.